Some of you might know that before I came to Carnegie Mellon, I was working for a local nonprofit called Bike Pittsburgh. So Bernardo's research and work is actually really, really important to me. So we're really glad to be hosting him today. Bernardo, can you tell me how do I pronounce your last name so I don't butcher it?
That's a tough one. Pires.
Pires.
Yes.
He's a project scientist here at the Robotics Institute. His recent work has focused on practical applications of computer vision, including wearable and handheld devices, intelligent bike and pedestrian counting, and GPS-denied vehicle navigation. From 2011 to 2014, he was a postdoctoral fellow working on methods for gaze tracking and its applications on people and object recognition. His postdoctoral research in technology was incorporated into a CMU spinoff. Bernardo holds a PhD degree from Carnegie Mellon University, and his research won the Professor Louise Vidagal Award for Best Graduation Thesis. And I think you're going to really enjoy his presentation, and glad to see you all here. Thanks.
Thank you, Connie, for the introduction. Thank you all for coming. So this is, so just to give you a little bit of context, so yes, the work, and someone was actually just telling me that there's actually 3 computer vision conferences happening today at the same time. This one actually has computer vision in its title, but it's not that much focused on computer vision. It's much more focused on the safety of bicycles and pedestrians. So here, the computer vision is more a tool that we want to kind of use to get useful data that will lead to to safer streets for everyone, especially for bikes and pedestrians. So that's the focus of the talk. So for those that came expecting a heavy computer vision talk, they might be somewhat disappointed. But you can always come to me in the end. We wrote a paper about this stuff, so there's a lot more technical details we can discuss. For those more interested in the data, I hope to cater to exactly what you hope to get. So I'm Bernardo Pires. So this work, of course, as everything, was joint work. Mehmet Kokamas was my postdoc, and students Chris, John, Ganesh, and Dhruv. John was our engineer helping us with some of the details on the construction of the device that you're going to see later. So what's this all about? So computer vision as a data collection tool. So as you all know, more and better traffic data really is the fundamental key to making better decisions regarding the future of transportation. So you can guide policy making, you can optimize spending, and you can definitely increase safety. As in everything, budgets are limited. So there's only so much you can do. If you decide you're going to spend on infrastructure, there's a lot of infrastructure out there that you can spend your money on, and very easily you can spend your whole budget. So one of the things we're trying to do here is collect some data that can help us guide the decisions that you have to make. So here we go, computer vision as a tool for collecting accurate and actionable traffic data. Why computer vision and why cameras? So there's a lot of, if we go into counting, just specifically the counting problem, so you want to know, for example, how many vehicles cross the street, bikes, pedestrians, cars. There has been already a lot of sensors that you can put out and collect some data. Now, you have loops, piezoelectric tubes, whatever. But cameras have some very, very specific advantages that can give you a lot more and better data. For once, they're really the only sensor that can count all methods of transportation at the same time for the same place. And then you can also use them to have a lot more detailed counts and statistics. So whereas with an inductive loop, a car has passed by, here with computer vision, you can really tell a lot more details. For example, if you have a cyclist, you can try and guess their age. You can try and find what type of bicycle they're actually riding. So this will give you a lot more. You can do some even more fancier tracking. For example, you can try and find the car that passed, in one direction 3 hours ago. Can you see it coming back in the other direction? Then kind of close the loop of what happened to that person. Can you see the commute going one way and then the other? If you only see the commute one way, is there a reason why you only see the same car going one direction but not coming back, or even the same cyclist? So there's a lot of distinct advantages that cameras give you. Just because they work just like our eyes, they give you a lot of information about the world. Of course, there's always a drawback, as with everything. And the big drawback with the cameras is that you need a lot more processing, essentially a lot more computer power to go through the images and kind of extract the valuable nuggets of information. So that might be, and I think that a lot of the reason why we haven't seen more use of computer vision methods up till now, until recently, is a lot related to that. We really needed to have some powerful processing to be able to automatically go through the images and extract the information. To put this also, or to see the same problem in a different way, you can also think of data collection in different categories, just now focusing on cameras. You can have permanent cameras that have distinct advantages. You get a lot more data. For a specific spot, you can grab all the data over all the time, so meaning you can be collecting data at 2 p.m. or be collecting data at 2 a.m. So you can really see all the cycles. But put cameras out there, permanent cameras installed everywhere you care about, is actually pretty expensive. So that might not be the best thing to do. An alternative is to have temporary data collection. And this is a temporary data collection device that we actually built here, that you can just go on the street, strap to a pole, strap to a light fixture, and just collect data for a few hours. Advantages, well, you have a lot lower cost compared to a permanent solution, a lot more flexible because you can cover a large area. You can go to one street one day, a different street the other day. Of course, you will collect less data just by the nature of it. That setup is actually not, we don't really want to leave it overnight. We have limited maybe like 10 hours of data collection there. So yeah, and that's not, it's pretty hard to have people go and set it up every day. So this limits your data collection, but from another perspective, it's a lot more flexible because you can go and put it exactly at the hot spots you want to look at. And that's actually what we did, and I'm going to talk about. And then the last one, which is kind of like the ultimate barrier, is just to have this opportunistic data collection. Everyone today carries a cell phone, carries a smartphone. And if you can have data collection that's opportunistic, meaning I see something that I think is wrong and I can just pull my phone out and actually just record and submit that data collection to someone else that can go over it, that can be almost like the ultimate frontier on data collection, because pretty much you're opening it up for everyone to help. Regardless, at least as long as you have low number of people doing that, that would actually give you the least data, even though it's the most flexible. And a big challenge with that is the lack of structure. Because if you're having people just collect this, they're going to handheld their device. And even if you have instructions, they're most likely not going to follow your instructions and will get you the worst possible angles for the data that you want to collect, will get you the hardest images to parse and see what's going on there. So that's really the biggest challenge. And that's actually something we're actively working on right now. So as you'd expect, just by the way I introduced these things, I'm actually really going to focus mostly on the temporary and opportunistic data collection. So I'm going to go over 3 computer vision projects that we've been working on for the past 2 years. And 2 of them actually use a temporary setup that we have here, and the last one uses this idea of having an app to collect data. And specifically, that app is going to look at the speed of cars, or vehicles, actually. So the first project that I'm going to talk about is the cyclist and pedestrian counting. Second one, pedestrian detection and wait time measurement. And the third one is actually the speedgun app for mobile devices. So as I said, 3 projects that we focused on. The first we started on was actually counting bikes and pedestrians. Why? Well, I guess that's kind of obvious as you follow at least a little bit of the goings on in Pittsburgh. I mean, we have a big push, and I think it's a great push to have more and more bike lanes, but there's always a pushback, as with everything you do. And so I think really the key that really helps to frame all the infrastructure investment and all the spending that you have is to have more data. So our objective with this was really just to collect the usage data for bike paths, dedicated lanes, and sidewalks. I mean, this is a very broad objective. We actually just focused on dedicated bike lanes, but overall, we can even go out and count more. But this is the main goal, and we have been working with the city of Pittsburgh. So what was the solution that we came up with? As you'd expect, you have a camera overlooking a sidewalk or a bike lane, and you'd use computer vision algorithms to try and count the pedestrians and the cyclists. So here's some more detail of the data collection device that we built here. So John Kozar, I mentioned him in the beginning. He was the main electrical engineer behind kind of setting this up for us. We actually bought pretty much off-the-shelf parts. We just assembled it and made sure it actually worked for our needs. So we just bought a ruggedized tablet because we wanted whoever went there and to set up to have some easy way to set up the data collection with a touch screen. And then we had an extensible pole. That's actually the only one we could find that we felt safe about. It was actually kind of military grade. So that's actually a military grade pole, really, really heavy. But you just, it collapses down to something about maybe this height, 5 feet or something, and then you can actually, extend it all the way pretty high. And I can't remember exactly how high it goes, but it's pretty high. You can see, just by looking at the street sign, it can even go higher than that, but that's about it enough. And then we, bought a metal box and all the stuff that you needed to install this. So how does this work? Oh, and that, by the way, it has a kind of bullet camera, miniature camera mounted at the top. So the idea is we can just go to an intersection or just anywhere really in the city where we think the traffic might be interesting. As long as there's some fixtures to attach it, we just attach it there, and then we just take the pole up, put the camera up there, and just collect data for up to 10 hours. This is the kind of images that you get. This was collected actually near CMU campus back on Fruit Street. So pretty much we did the data collection that we collected about 50 hours of data. So this was over, I believe, 7 days total. I think 7 or 8 days total. So we didn't even collect 10 hours per day, but this is kind of how the images look like. And then, of course, what we needed was we needed to create a data set that we annotated to manually verify whatever we developed that really actually worked. So the next big step was to actually have an annotation tool that will allow us to annotate the pedestrians and the bikes that we wanted to count. And this was why this was so that we could really figure out if all the methods that we were developing were actually working, we're actually counting things correctly. So we created our own. We weren't really happy with what was out there, so we created our own data annotation tool to help us annotate these things. And it actually, one of the main things it had was this ability to predict the path that people are taking, and then it would help you track because you'd have to mark, a person would go and mark where a pedestrian is, and it would follow that pedestrian for a while. This is what it looked like. It was actually a web-based tool. And we used that to actually label 10 hours of data. So it wasn't as hard as it sounds. That's about 1 million frames of images that we labeled manually to make sure that our algorithms worked. We saw 541 pedestrians and a little bit more than 100 cyclists. And this is the green boxes. I don't know how well you can see them, but they're green boxes around the pedestrians. That's the people that were annotated. So this is what it looked like. This was our data set to actually see how well what we developed worked. Then how did we actually go about and build the computer vision system to be able to just take any image and count the bikes and the pedestrians? So this is how it works, like very high level, very, very high level. So essentially there's two classifiers. So there's two stages. This works as a kind of a cascade for those that are familiar with the term. So there's two steps on the cascade. The first step, we just have a classifier. It's basically a computer vision algorithm that will just tell you if a certain object that you're looking for is there or not. So our first classifier really only looks as, do we have pedestrians or cyclists in the image? So is there something relevant in the image or not? So if you find either pedestrians or bikes, doesn't really care about, just kind of wants to filter out the background. And then the second stage, over there, well, if this would point, I guess, yeah, you can't really see it, but anyway. The second step would just kind of split the pedestrians from the bikes and count the bikes and the pedestrians. So this is the first stage. This is just trying to find bikes or pedestrians. So I don't know if you guys were able to see it. So this is just actually finding some bikes here. The colors are different every time it finds someone else. So it just cycles through the colors. They don't really mean anything right now. About 3 minutes, have people running and walking by. so this is, for example, and this is actually a good example of something you might want to detect and that you want to say, well, you're not really supposed to do that, right? Jaywalking. But anyway, so yeah, we found that's actually pretty interesting because you actually go, when you go manually through this, you find people doing all the things that they're not supposed to do, and you find cars doing all the things they're not supposed to do also. We found a number of cars going, way too fast doing this turn here, especially with a bike lane there. So because this actually, I don't know if you can see, but there's cones, so it's protected, right? So there's cones over there right until that turn, and then you see cars just coming and doing that turn pretty fast, which is like, whoa, you don't want to. But anyway, so there's definitely, and this is actually something you can actually do and try and do later on, which is flag these incidents, which I think are actually pretty important. We haven't really gone there. We want to in the future, but I think these are actually the key. We have a list. I didn't put it here because it's kind of a long list, but we have a list of, for example, things that we saw while we're going through the data that were kind of really, really bad. So just jaywalking and stuff like that. And then, you can always try and use that data for something, or at least to identify, look, this is a problem. We see a lot of jaywalking here. So maybe that might be a good idea to have some way to cross the street safely at that location, right? Because there goes another pedestrian. So anyway, this is when we go and try and count pedestrians versus bikes. So you can see the counter going up. I don't know if you can see, so 2 pedestrians right now, 2 pedestrians and 1 bike, 3 pedestrians. The red line it's just because that's where we actually have the best tracking. So we're just counting people as they cross that line. So there goes 1 more bike, and you see it counts, okay, 2 bikes now. And essentially we just go through and run through the whole video, and at the end we have just counts for how many pedestrians, how many bikes we saw. This is actually what the results look like. Overall accuracy was really good, actually. We're very happy. So 95% accuracy. Keep in mind this was actually this was June, so this is actually pretty good weather for the type of computer vision that you want to do. So I would expect that to be lower if we go out and the weather is bad. We did collect some data with rain, actually. But we didn't collect, heavy rain or stuff like that. That would really completely throw the thing off. Anyway, this is the confusion matrix, which just really tells you on the off center. So the center or the eyes of that matrix are actually the correct ones. So on the eye means like on the top left corner you see pedestrians. That means that you correctly saw pedestrian. You said that the pedestrian that was a true pedestrian, and you classified it as a pedestrian correctly. And then, for example, you have 4 times in which bikes were counted as pedestrians. So, of course, there's some mistakes there, as with anything. These are some of the sample errors that we actually made. So these are some of the 5% that were kind of counted erroneously. A lot of it has to do with the background. So you see on the left, the person that was classified as a background, or 2 people that were classified as a background. And then you see sometimes it happens with clusters of people that because they get clustered together by the algorithm, and so it looks to the computer that's a bike when it's actually just a bunch of people. So overall, this was kind of one project that we did where we just went out, counted bikes, counted pedestrians. We submitted this data to the city. And we're actually ongoing right now to go and collect a lot more intersections. Questions? Go ahead.
Curious what the features were in your classifier. Like, did you consider whether the person was on the sidewalk or in a bike lane, speed?
Oh, yeah. So right now here we just have a region of interest. So that just kind of takes pretty much just gets us rid of the cars or whatever that's obviously not going to be any people there. And then it was really just down to appearance and speed, nothing else. So if it looks, so we had like a learning step where we learned what's the appearance of a bike compared to appearance of a person. And the speed was an input, but essentially it just learns how kind of a bike looks like when compared to people. So person, go ahead.
So a bike at a distance would appear possibly like a human, but as it gets closer, does
Exactly.
the algorithm adjust?
Yes. Yes, exactly. So that's why there's tracking, and this is definitely one of the key things that you need to have. I mean, you can't really, or you can guess for a single image, but really it doesn't really work for a single image. You really have to follow a person for a number of frames, and you can see actually in that video I was showing, well, even on this one, you can see sometimes it flickers. And it flickers when it's not actually sure what's looking at, or sometimes you can see it going back on and on. This one really, it's just making it's looking at the whole path and just making the guess as to what's there. So it can definitely adjust. And so the count is made, as I said, right at the beginning, because, as you said, as people are further away, it's much harder to track when they become too small. More questions here? This is a good time if you have questions, because I'm going to actually move to the next.
Did you consider whether the person's in the bike lane or on the sidewalk?
No, not for this, no. Because they're actually, and that's the other thing that's actually interesting from the policy perspective, is that a lot of people were using that bike lane for running. So there's actually a lot of pedestrians running on the bike lane. And actually, surprisingly, vice versa, we saw a few bikes, not as many, but a few bikes on the sidewalk. So sorry, I didn't actually reply to that before. But yeah, we tried to use that, but actually just confused the system more, because you can't actually use that to predict who's what, because people don't follow that. People will walk on the bike lane, bikes will go on the.
No predictive value?
It has some, but really we really didn't figure it would be worthwhile to include. Questions? No? Okay. So the second project that I wanted to talk about is closely related to this, but it's to tackle kind of more of a specific problem, or a different problem, more specific. So we wanted to detect pedestrians and especially measure wait time of pedestrians to cross intersections. Why? As some of you may know, quite a few of the intersections in Pittsburgh have adaptive light control systems, so street light for controlling the lights for the intersection, the control intersection. So the main system that's used in Pittsburgh is actually developed here at CMU, called SureTrack. And as with everything, it got installed, but some of the intersections, some of the pedestrians actually felt that they were actually ending up by, when the system was on and was adapting to the traffic flow. So the idea of a system that adapts, for some of you that may not be familiar, so the SureTrack system really just tries to adapt the green light, the time that you give green light, to each of the various directions crossing the intersection to maximize the flow of the cars. So it really just wants to help the traffic flow better. And it works. I mean, it was installed. They saw, I think, 40% faster throughput when they did the study. So it actually really works. I mean, it reduces pollution. It's really good. But one thing that really is not being included into the systems is this ability to look at the pedestrians. And as you might guess, sometimes if you're just looking at the cars and you're trying to guess, okay, how much green light am I going to give to the cars, you might not be optimizing it, or you might not even be considering the pedestrians. And so there's always this big contention that you're kind of giving a better treatment to the cars than the pedestrians. And what we wanted to do was just take our portable device, go to an intersection, measure what's actually going to happen there. So we kind of teamed up with the SureTrack. We went and did the data collection. We used the portable device that we've already seen, and we went on 2 consecutive weeks. This was early December 2015, so it's going to be about a year now. And we went on 2 consecutive weeks and collected Wednesdays and Thursdays. The idea was to try and get 2 days, one after the other, where we expected the same kind of number and pattern of the pedestrians approaching the intersection. And we selected a single intersection. This was actually Center and Aiken. Center and South Aiken, yes. So the same data collection device, so I don't want to go over this again. This is the site. For those that you might not know it, is actually, there's a lot of kind of, let's say, traffic, both pedestrian and car traffic at this intersection. There's a bus stop nearby, for those of you that are familiar with it. And there's a lot of pedestrians coming here. And this was one of the intersections that you could see. Well, we know that the SureTrack system is really not taking into account the pedestrians. So are they really getting, the short end of the stick because of the optimization for the cars? So this was the calendar that we had. So this was December 9 and 10th was 1 week, and December 16 and 17 was the other week. Kind of close to the holidays, which is always a little bit bad. But the weather was reasonable, which is important when you want to see the pedestrians out there. So the weather was actually fairly okay for December. It was cold, but it wasn't bad weather enough that people would, avoid using the transportation, avoid walking down the street. Okay, so here's the methodology. We collected, so this is what the camera view looked like. We split it up the view into 4 areas. And so all we really wanted was people that were going to wait and cross. So we tracked all the pedestrians, and we considered that the pedestrians waited if they entered via 1 or 2 and left via 3 or 4, meaning that they went and crossed the street. Okay? So you can imagine people coming from all other directions, and so that's something we had to filter from. There are people that were just coming from 2, going around the corner. There are people that entering through 4 because they're crossing the street, whatever. So we had to really try and narrow this down. This was something that was new to our counting scheme from before, was this need to kind of follow where people were going. So we only really counted pedestrians that waited at a specific corner, and we counted pedestrians that were crossing in either direction. So either center or Aiken. We counted both. And we kind of jumbled both statistics together. Challenges, of course, there's always challenges. One of the main challenges, believe it or not, was actually people with cell phones. Because they would just wait for the bus, and they would wander around the intersection while they were waiting for the bus, back and forth. So they would kind of show up in our interest zone. We were kind of thinking, okay, this is someone that's going to cross. So let's start counting how much this guy is waiting. And then all of a sudden he goes back to wait for the bus. And actually, even sometimes the bus actually stopped too close, and then you had people leaving to enter the bus. They're actually not crossing the street. And as you can imagine, someone waiting for the bus would really throw everything off, because it seems like they're waiting minutes and minutes and minutes to cross the street, which they're obviously not, because they're just waiting for the bus. And then phone and bus. Yes, go ahead.
Were you tracking people so that, if you saw someone walking back and forth, you were able to tag them as, this is person X, and
Yes.
we've seen them before 5 times?
Great question. So if they stayed in view, yes. As soon as they left, we really weren't doing that kind of retargeting, meaning that when they re-enter, we want to find them again. We were not doing that retargeting. But as long as they left, for example, if they came through 1, left back to 1, that they wouldn't count anyway, because they still were just wandering around. They really only counted if they, for example, left through 4 or 3. Yes.
How do you know when they had the opportunity to cross? Because I
Great
see
question.
the
We don't.
sign.
So exactly, there's a limitation there. So there's two limitations. We're just counting how much people are waiting. So we don't know if they jaywalk. So we don't know if they actually crossed on the red. And on the other side of that corner, we don't know if they were distracted, if they got a green but didn't cross for whatever reason, which can happen also with a cell phone. You can actually be looking at your phone, and there's a green light, and you actually never even start crossing the street. And by the time you look up again, it's already red again. And you figured, oh my God, this is taking forever. And it's not. It just never really looked up from your phone. So anyway, those are 2 things we really couldn't see. And there's just limitations on the data that we have. And actually, I think I have a slide that actually says exactly that.
Move the camera so you.
Oh yeah, you could definitely move the camera. You can have more cameras trying to see, or even better than that, you could just tag with the SureTrack, because SureTrack system actually knows when it's green and not. So this is actually a setup for the next, that we already have an ongoing project that I'm not talking about now because it's still really not really started. But our next plan is actually have permanent cameras here. And not only have permanent cameras, but actually feed the information from those cameras to the intelligence system. So the system will actually start not only care about cars, but also kind of look at who's waiting where, how many people are waiting where, when it goes and gives the green lights. And so try and optimize for all the users, not just the cars, or not just the vehicles, or the motor vehicles, let's put it that way. So anyway, these are the statistics. We had about 15 hours of data to work with. There's some limitations because we wanted to have exactly the same times on both days. Because as you can expect, it varies a lot. We saw more than 5,000 pedestrians. We saw almost 1,500 crossing the intersection. This is the summary of what the results look like. So, as you can see, we did see an effect of SureTrack, and we did see that the pedestrians seemed to be waiting longer. Now, the great thing about this is actually that you can quantify how much actually it means to wait longer, okay? And I think this is actually very important. It's not just that, okay, we saw that there's people waiting a little bit more. We saw that exactly how much it was. So we saw that on average, they waited about 2 seconds more to cross intersection when the SureTrack system was on. So you see the first column is week of December 9, it's week of the first week, and you see off and then on. So when it's off, on the first day, people waited on average almost 17 seconds. When it was on, they waited almost 19 seconds. Questions? Oh, okay. And then for the second week, the same thing. So we actually, the average wait was 15, so actually seemed, for whatever reason, people waited less. But they still, on the day where short track was on, they still waited more. And I just want to notice that we actually flipped the day. So one day, short track was on Wednesday and off on Thursday, and the other day it was on the other week it was reversed. Just kind of try. So the big difficulty is here. You can't replay time, right? So you can never really see. You can never get exactly the same pedestrian showing up at exactly the same time. So the best you can do is really try and collect days one after the other and hope that it looks about the same. And you can actually see when I show you some graphs that actually, despite all that, the traffic patterns, meaning the pedestrian showing up patterns, are actually pretty different from one day to the next for whatever reason. Right? Okay. So here's the context of this. Okay, 2 seconds is only really 12 to 16% of the extra time. So it's not really that much longer. And it actually may be a reasonable trade-off. And I think this is actually a very important point that people sometimes don't notice. Keep in mind that short track, even when it's optimizing traffic flow, a lot of these pedestrians are actually taking the bus and then walking. So if short track is making their bus go faster, it might make their bus go faster more than the 2 seconds that they actually lose at the intersection waiting to cross. And I think that's an important point that sometimes people don't focus when they kind of see, oh my God, this intersection takes so long. As soon as they put this smart thingy here, and now all of a sudden, I'm waiting twice what I used to wait. I think this is actually an important point. So for example, a lot like maybe, we can't really tell 100%, but I think maybe 70% of the people waiting to cross were actually coming from a bus stop right around the corner. So if their bus was actually going faster because of short track, maybe waiting to cross the road was not that big a deal. And then the total wait time is unlikely to lead to jaywalk or unsafe crossing. Why? Well, there's this statistic that, this is from Chicago Complete Streets Design, that kind of tells you, and this seems to be fairly true, that people really only jaywalk when they wait for about a minute and no green light shows up. So if we're seeing average times, this is the average, I'm going to show you some more details numbers, but if we're seeing average times on the 15 seconds, less than 20 seconds, this really is not really leading, or we wouldn't expect, we would be very surprised if this was leading to serious jaywalk, okay? So this is just the context. Now I have some more detailed graphs for those of you that like the graphs. This is just the people showing up. So blue means it was off, red means it was on. And as you can see, for whatever reason, the people actually do not show up at the same times. So you can see that it's interesting because the number of, I don't know if you guys noticed on the previous chart, but the number of pedestrians or table, the number of pedestrians is actually about the same on both days. So there's probably about the same people doing that commute on the days, but they actually show up at different times. Or if you parse this into, it's about 15-minute intervals each bar, and you see people showing up at different times. We don't know why. Go ahead.
I thought that said there were more pedestrians on the days of short track, by about the
Oh.
same proportion as the increase in wait time.
Well, let me go back and show you. So the total pedestrians crossing, can you see my, okay. So this is about, I would still consider the same ballpark for this, especially for this number. So on the week of December 17 and 16, or 16 and 17, you see almost 300. This is about the same thing. Yeah. But, I mean, we really don't have any clear reason for this, and that's one of the reasons why we switch Wednesdays and Thursdays. We don't really know whether it was a little bit more people. Maybe some of them were earlier or later. Holiday was coming, so that's always a big factor. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned that, but we actually planned to have a third week, but there was actually construction. When we went there to put it, there was construction on that day, so we only got 2 weeks. But anyway, so this is the number of pedestrians crossing. This is the average wait time, and it actually really changes. I think one of the key things that actually we did mention to short track and already led to some small tweaks on their side was that this, for example, this point here in time, or these two. So you can see up to a certain extent that when short track is off, the wait time really tends to be more constant. And there's these spikes when short track is on, these red spikes here, that may be, so on that specific point, there were people that waited longer for whatever reason. And this may actually be leading to this perception that sometimes the thing takes longer. So these are some limitations. So we had just a single intersection. As you mentioned before, we can't jaywalk. We can detect if people are jaywalking. And there's always the proximity of the holiday season that may have impacted this. Also, there was road work nearby, which also may have impacted on one of the weeks. That's why there's a week missing in between. So these are some of the limitations that we saw for that. Any questions about this? Oh, go ahead.
So that intersection doesn't have cross signals and doesn't have a button.
No.
Do you, but the one just north of it, or I don't know what structure, just next to it at Baum and Aiken does? Like what, is that, are those cross signals integrated into SureTrack, or how does that work?
That is,
Would
that,
impact
yeah.
these findings?
So that's an interesting question for the SureTrack people. I do know the answer. So this is the answer that they gave me, and I'm kind of replaying to you. If those push buttons are being fed into the traffic control system, they're also being fed to SureTrack. I don't know. So because I haven't developed the algorithm, I don't really know how they use it. But we did this on purpose. So we went to an intersection that did not have any pedestrian input on purpose to kind of see the worst possible case. So the case where the pedestrians really don't get a chance to tell anything, to give any information to the SureTrack algorithm. More questions? Okay. So this finally, I don't think I'm too far behind, but let me know if I'm running late. So this is the speedgun app for mobile devices. It's just a quick overview because this is active development right now. So this is what it looks like right now. We're actually just targeting iPhones for now. Sorry to the Android users out there. You have to pick your battles. This is kind of what it tries to do. It tries to tell you how fast the car. So you just stand on the street next to a roadway that you think you want to measure the flow of traffic, and you can just point it and collect the video. Courtney.
Are you going to talk about the context of where this came from?
I was really not going into that, but you want to quickly just mention that? Yeah.
I just want to. I'm Courtney. I live in Traffic 21. One of the things that I think is really critical to mention here is that all of these projects that Bernardo has developed have been in direct response to either the first one, the counting, was from city planning. The second one was from Bike Pittsburgh, who had concerns about pedestrian safety in and around the SureTrack intersections. Responding to your comment, I can talk to you more about that. And this one was developed in response to last year. There was a bicycle fatality in Oakland, and Matt Bauman, who was a researcher at the University of Pittsburgh, developed an application from that you could detect speed from the top of the cathedral right down into that road segment. And after a bicycle half night that Traffic 21 held in partnership with Bike Pittsburgh, Bernardo saw an opportunity to figure out a way to, rather than having to be 100 feet or 36 stories above a road, how someone on the side of the road could actually detect people who were going above the speed limit. So that's where this project came from.
Yes, I was going to mention Matt's work, but I really think that, yes, I think the fatality was a big factor to drive really, more interest into what's going on and kind of drive also. Go ahead. Sorry. To really spur, I think, the development, but I really don't want to just be, and I think Matt was really great in responding to that really quickly, but I really think that this is something that we want to have. We want to have the ability to just be able to, if we think that there's an unsafe situation where there's cars driving too fast, we want to be able to pull out our phones and get some recording of what's going on. Go ahead.
Can you say a little bit about how it measures speed?
Yes, I am going into that. Yes. Very high level, we can talk more offline, but yes. So it's actually just tracking the license plates right now, because license plates are a known object in the scene with known dimensions. And it's actually, because it's still under development, it actually has the user's help for finding the license plates and kind of doing a good job of tracking the license plates. And that's also why you see the speed bubble atop the the car. So I'll just go over this, try and kind of fill in everyone on it, and then if you have more questions, this is kind of light on details on purpose. As I said, we're still developing it, but hopefully, if you have questions, just feel free to ask. I think we even have 15 minutes at the end for open-ended questions. So anyway, so the key thing here is we don't really want, no one really carries a speed gun, but everyone carries a cell phone. So if you could do even course, and keep in mind this is a course estimate. I mean, we're not going to use this to write tickets to people, okay? But we can use this as a tool for kind of drawing attention to situations that are unsafe. And so the idea is really to go from a speed gun to a mobile device. We have a course estimate of the we want to try and get a course estimate of the speed. That number there is way too detailed for what we want to do. We just want to have about maybe 5 miles per hour increments of what's going on. And really we want to have a tool that's, so far really I envision it for more the policymakers and the stakeholders, because this is actually really requires somewhat of a trained user to use it, okay? Some details. Anyway, so what's the status right now? It's a proof of concept. We have the app working. We collected videos. We estimated vehicle speeds from videos, but it's still under active development. And the key thing here is it requires a trained user. Trained is more, really, the key thing here is really to be careful on how you hold your cell phone, to not have a lot of motion in the video. We are going to build more robustness into it. And also trained into how to help the computer kind of find the license plate. So here's an overview of what it looks like. So there's an optional step of camera calibration. We already have some parameters for the iPhone camera, so we don't necessarily need to do that. And you definitely don't need to do it every time. Then the idea is you either record the video right now, or you use a pre-recorded video from before. And you go and select the license plate in 2 or more of the frames. And then the algorithm just estimates the speed based on that. Our objective, of course, is to get rid of that dashed portion and to make this kind of fully automatic. So you want to compute the speed. So this is the objective. It's not where we are right now. We want to compute the speed without user intervention. We want to automatically track and follow the license plate. And we definitely want to simplify the camera calibration, which is the main step that's kind of keeping this also away from the people. And we want to increase robustness to recording conditions, especially because your hand shakes as you're recording, and those shakes make it harder for it to guess the speed. How does the user input the license plate? So really, it just zooms in, and I have the demo right next to this. It just zooms in on the license plate. You click the 2 points for the line, for the edge of the license plate, for all 4 edges, and then it tries to snap into the license plate. Keep in mind, we know the size of the license plate, and we could adjust it for different license plates anyway. But that's a known object, and that's what helps us really follow that object around and know how fast the things are going.
Yeah, I know a situation just recently where they removed 2 stop signs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I go by there occasionally, and I just noticed that people are speeding now because it's downhill. 'Cause they don't have to stop. Now they go faster. It's a 25-mile zone. I'd say they go 35 to 40. So if I use something like this and gathered information, I wouldn't have previous information before the stop signs were removed.
No.
To compare it to. But what I wonder is, would they have done a speed test prior to removing the stop signs? So they would have that information already.
That's exactly, I think, the key question for the policymakers. I mean, I imagine that they do at least look at it somewhat carefully before they do any change like that. So I imagine they might have that. But the idea here is not to, because we know the budgets are so limited. The idea is actually to put the tool more in the hands of stakeholders, of interested people, interested parties that can kind of help draw attention to this. So as I mentioned, I mean, the idea is to use this tool and try and collect some data that you can bring to attention, and you can maybe forward it to PennDOT or City Hall or whoever is responsible for that area, and kind of tell them, look, it seems that after you, I don't know how it was before, but after you took the stop signs, it seems that we see speeding. I mean, because regardless of how fast people were going before, they definitely still have that 25 miles per hour, so they shouldn't be going at 35, regardless of what they were doing before. And that's another interesting thing. I think also this can also be used by policymakers themselves for the before and after. so that you don't have to have the resources to have a speed gun. You can try and use this as a data collection tool, as an alternative to actually having someone with a speed gun there. I know, for example, on the bike and pedestrian counting, that's something that we wanted to do, was the before and after, and we are going to do. We expect to do before and after a bike lane is put in place. So we go before, see how much bike users are there on the road, and we hope to see an increase when we come back later and the bike lane is there versus before. I hope I have answered your question. Go ahead.
How are people doing this in real time? Because you're talking about moving objects.
No, they record the video.
Oh,
And then they go back, yes, and then they go back. So this is the demo. Let's see how well it runs inside PowerPoint. I don't know. I don't know how well this is going. I hope you can see it. Yeah, it's green, but okay. Is it back? Yes. So this is, it was the problem. So he's speaking just a video from before, and I hope you guys can see it. I can try and get it bigger. But anyway, this is I think it's close to campus. You just see cars driving by. He stopped, picked the frame, zoomed in, selected. And this is also an interesting thing to say that, this is just technology to do this is really just shown up now. So that's why we can actually have this and have people actually helping us by touching the point. So just selected the license plate. Now he's zooming out, letting the car drive a little bit further, stop again, zoom in, click the corners, and then you just, when you play it back, you just see a bubble on top saying our estimate for the speed on it. So it just comes back and replays it, and then you can see the bubble on top. I don't know if you can actually see it because of the video. I'm sorry about that. Let me see if I can freeze it for you. Come on. Yep. Yeah, I had a screenshot before, so that says 28 miles per hour. So that's kind of like the guess that he got from this. I can try and let me see if I can get. I had it open here, but I don't know how well this is going to play. Is it better? It's a little bit bigger. It might be smoother, the playback. So just go back to that. Yep. So any questions on this while I play it back?
Is it doing instantaneous speed or average speed
Average.
over the?
Average. So it's really, and at this point, it's even, the tracking is very simple. But there's a lot more that you can do because, and this is the key thing, now we carry with us like, cameras of a resolution that you just, a few years ago, just to get those into a lab would be pretty expensive. And now we kind of just all carry one in our pocket. We can just get this really, if you can see how much he's zooming in and you can still read the license plate, that's really amazing. And I'm not even sure if he was going to get the full resolution. I think he was. So anyway, and this, by the way, this is actually work from Chris Caffeine, my student. He's doing an excellent job on this app. He's the main developer on it. So, questions? Go ahead, please.
Maybe how you can do it in the night.
Well, difficult. It's going to be difficult, of course. There, again, limitations. As long as you can, I think a good way to see this is if a human's eyes were not able to see the license plate, at this point the camera in the phone is also not going to be able to see it. And now, if the street is well illuminated enough that you can actually see the license plate, then sure, no reason. I would say for this type of tracking, it's behind what a human can do, but it's not that much behind. So.
Not only thinking about plates, but what about army use, night vision?
Oh, of course, if you.
Yeah, just for moving pedestrians and bicycles, for that.
So a key thing here, I think, a key element here is that because there's always, when you record images, there's always a scale problem. So you don't know the dimensions of the object that you're recording. So you need a known object in the scene to be able to tell what's going on. But you can definitely feed, infrared or night vision. Yes, you can definitely feed that to the algorithm. It's still going to work. Yes, absolutely. As long as they're, yes. Oh yes, absolutely. Now the key thing here is that we really want to use just the device people are carrying, just your cell phone. But definitely you can have a lot more specific devices for this. Questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, two technical ones. First, on the original bullet camera setup with the telescopic
Yes.
tool, did that require permitting in order to actually allow you to attach it and collect the video?
Yes.
Okay. Second one is the.
Is that a trick question?
I don't know. I know one of the issues. Second was, what were these stats on that tough book? Was that like a new top-of-the-line tough book, or was that like a?
So we actually went a little bit overboard on that. It was relatively expensive, but you don't really need one that expensive because it was just collecting data. I think that one. So the key thing here is,
So
and
that
we
wasn't processing the data.
no, it was just collecting.
Okay, so and then it was.
Yeah,
processed.
yeah. Now the key problem that you have with this type of thing is the temperature. So we were in December, so this goes really cold, and that tough bed. I mean, it costs about $3,000. The main reason is it's actually got heating elements. So if it goes too cold, it actually has like a heater that will heat the circuit back up so that it can actually work normally. And the other actually, and this is actually SureTrack people told me that even tougher than cold when you have something long term is actually the dust gets everywhere. Okay? So you really need something ruggedized. And if you put ruggedized on any electronics, if you put ruggedized in front of it, the price guaranteed doubles just because. So yeah, that thing can go. I don't know. I think it's like -20 to 100 and something degrees and whatnot. So it's really all weather. Courtney.
Yeah, are there any commercialization efforts happening around these?
Not really right now. We're always interested to talk about that, but we're not really looking into that as of yet because we're not really sure how much interest there is. But if there's interest, we can definitely discuss.
And
Sorry.
are you factoring out motion of the camera? If someone's rotating
on the phone, not yet, but we have to, and we're going to track the background to do that. Yes. Go ahead.
What about the privacy? Like, how long are you keeping the surveillance videos?
So that's public street, and we did go through. I mean, one of the key things that you did. I don't know if you noticed, but let me bring the PowerPoint back up. So the first thing that so going back to those slides about where the data that we collected, we did show this to the IRB and we did go through their approval. It's not, so the fact that you're in a public location really helps. It's not really data identifiable because the resolution for the bullet camera is actually not that high. So, and plus people as they get closer, they usually tend to look front. So you actually, I mean, unless you really know the person, you probably won't be able to tell who this biker is.
So then what about the work you were talking about, trying to identify the same person on both sides of a commute?
Oh, that work you definitely have to be more careful about. Yeah. I mean, but even then, you can try and use like features. One thing that works really well is what people are wearing. And that's really, I mean, you can try and retarget or re-identify based on that, and it's not really going to be, I don't think, invading anyone's privacy. But that's something we have to always keep in mind. We kind of, this device with the bullet camera, because of the resolution and the angle, we kind of got kind of a clear go-ahead from CMU. But for example, the app there, that's one of the reasons why it's still under development, and I'm actually not really sure what's the future of it, is also that. I mean, you're kind of collecting the license plate. So. That's why I also see this as, and the other thing about the shaking, it requires the user to be trained, and that's why you have to, kind of take this carefully and one step at a time. Yes, go ahead,
So
sorry.
it looks like, is a lot of that based off of OpenCV?
So a lot of it is based off on OpenCV, yes.
Is there any interest in making that code available?
Depends on which code you're asking. So for the pedestrian tracking, we wrote a paper on it, and it's actually, from the paper you can get it. The difficulty with that one is actually that so let me actually show. So I guess we can kind of end the talk now, unless someone has more broader questions, and I can ask more details so that I don't have to keep everyone in the room. Okay? Yeah, okay. So, thanks. Thank you very much.